So our topic is expectation versus reality, and specifically in marriage, of course. So Susan's going to kick it off.
Okay. Well, first of all, we thought we'd do a little reflections on Christian marriage, just to get ourselves centered on that. And it really, in Christ, marriage is all about having a best friend to go through life with. And then it's a safe foundation to raise a family. And it is someone to grow old with. And, and plus, on top of that, it's just many, many opportunities to grow spiritually, because as we grow closer together, and that example is we become more and more like Jesus, or move more toward like being God, we're also becoming more like, we're growing closer together. So that is sort of a good
Susan and I are always looking at each other and say, I'm so glad to be growing old with you.
Yes.
Because it doesn't get old. That was a pun, but in other words, it's just so wonderful to be with your best friend for your whole life. Mm-hmm. And to be able to grow old together is a real privilege with the woman of my dreams.
Yes.
So. Now, this whole thing about expectations and reality, there's what you expected when you were thinking of getting married, and then there's what actually happened once you got married. There's also as you get into that conflict, which is inevitable, okay? When you find that conflict between expectation and reality, it's important to keep in your sights what is the ideal, what is the goal, right? What does a great marriage look like? Okay, so I have a one slide picture here of what Susan and I think of as Christian marriage. Okay, this sort of captures it in a picture for us that Christian marriage is growing as being great friends, growing in being great partners, growing in being great lovers. And if we're focused on that, then we're prepared to face the various obstacles which we're going to confront. And there's some more things on this slide. By the way, if anyone's listening to this on YouTube, or anyone hears about it, I've also posted the slides for this presentation to the North River Instagram page. So North River COC, you can check it out there. So you'll see the Steve Adkins diagrams. Okay. So the thing that's incredible and unique about Christian marriage, and by the way, well, let me just back up a little bit. The way that we're going to go is we're just going to talk for 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And we're going to give a little bit of overview of this expectation versus reality and how to handle it. And then we're going to tell two stories, and then we're open to just talking about it. Okay? So we can talk about anything. It would be better if we were talking about expectation versus reality, okay? But we can talk about anything, hopefully having to do with marriage,
Yeah.
okay? And really, it's about growing together, living and learning, and so forth. So the thing that's incredible about Christian marriage, and that sets it apart from just marriage in the world, is number one, God has actually done something remarkable in our lives. And it says it in Genesis 2. It's quoted numerous places. Jesus quotes it. Paul quotes it. Right, it's quoted a number of places. And that is, God has made the two into one flesh. God has made the two into one. And if you went through premarital counseling, you may have done the Learning to Live as One workbook. Okay? And I know Mary Alice and Grant went through that. They did that workbook. We just did that workbook with with Cameron and Sydney. So learning to live as one is a particular spiritual Christian principle. I mean, it's Judeo-Christian, right? It comes from Genesis. It's repeated many times in the discussions of marriage in the New Testament. So learning to live as one, that is a huge theme. And then just the idea that Paul brings out that marriage is like, that is the relationship of the husband and wife is in a mysterious way like the relationship of Christ and his church. So there's a lot to learn spiritually from going through the process of learning and growing in marriage. So what I did was, we got this verse here, Ephesians 5, 28 to 33. Notice I didn't start in verse 25 because I was trying to get as narrow a passage as possible on this particular theme of the unity that God has made out of the two one, and also the fact that there's this mystery talking about Christ and the church. When Paul is talking about husband and wife and their relationship, there's a lot you learn about Christ and his church.
Okay. And the next slide down is expectations versus reality in marriage. And these examples here are sort of high level, but one expectation might have been that we will never have any conflict. And then
So you probably didn't do premarital counseling.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it slips in there. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? You just think, oh, how much conflict could there be?
Yeah.
We love each other.
Right, we love each other. We're committed to the same things, but conflict is common. But I think the goal is that you will work it out.
Amen.
You'll work it out. Also, that expectations of that we will always have that feeling of being in love. Ours will never fade. The reality is that giddy kind of high adrenaline feeling that you get, it does fade. And I was reading something recently, the 5 love languages. I think it fades in about 3 years. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it doesn't last more than about 3 years. But then you get an opportunity to build something that is more lasting and that is deeper and is more enduring. Okay?
A lasting best friendship with an enduring love life. You gotta love that.
Yeah, that's
An
good.
enduring love life.
Yes. And another expectation might be that our relationship is easy because we love each other. I mean, you have trouble with people you don't love. But, truth is, all relationships take work, and but growth over time, it helps that love to mature. So another expectation might be that, we understand each other so well. We just click, we tick, and that's one thing we would finish each other's sentences early in our dating, whatever. But it's and now it's like, ooh, we don't understand each other as well as I thought we did. But working on that brings great satisfaction as you overcome those things and understand each other on a deeper level. And this is where we were thinking that the expectations versus reality, there's this gap of understanding. And sometimes the gap is there because you don't really understand yourself that well, and you're trying to understand how to communicate what you're feeling or thinking. And then the other thing is there's this gap of understanding with your spouse. I mean, trying to figure out what they're thinking and what their life experiences are, but there's this gap between, obviously we know that, between expectations and reality. And so you want to it takes understanding to bring that together to fill that gap and addressing it.
And in particular, there's often a lack of understanding about ourselves. The difficulty of collision of expectation with reality is we didn't even know that we had a certain expectation. And we find ourselves uncomfortable and in conflict or struggling to get along or to agree or to see eye to eye. But it may be because we don't really know what we ourselves are feeling. Okay? And then it's also a problem with we don't understand our spouse. Okay? So this is the essential problem, is we don't understand what the expectations are, or we don't understand what our own expectations are, and we don't understand what their expectations are, and when they're different, that's where expectation hits reality. Mm-hmm. So it's key to be able to understand ourselves and to understand our spouse, and that's the process of overcoming this conflict. So how do we address this gap? Okay, and in the end, this isn't really rocket science, right? We're going to repeat some of the basics of Christianity here, but nonetheless, it's profound. Okay, I say it's not rocket science, but it is. It's spiritual rocket science. So there is I mean, one of the things that Christians understand, we know it, but we have to learn it. We have to learn the reality of it, is what love is, right? The world doesn't understand love as Christians understand love. And Christians understand love differently because we have a divine example set for us in Jesus Christ. But here's a great passage in Philippians 2, 3, and 4. I'll come back to slide 5 in a moment. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. So when people ask me, not like people walk up to me all the time and ask me this question, but when I wonder, what is love? My answer is this. Love, agape love, is putting the needs of others above my own. And I've been 40 years a disciple of Jesus, 40 years learning to put the needs of others above my own needs, to consider them better than myself, or as the latest revision of the NIV says, to value others above yourselves. Okay? And so coming back to how do we address this gap of expectation versus reality? Well, the first thing, and I've got 3 little bullets there, okay? The first is the footing that we're on. The footing that we're on is not one of, I need to get my way, or I deserve to have my 50% of the good things in this marriage. It's one of humility. It's one about giving to one another. It's one of spouse above self. Okay? And those things are really embodied in this Philippians 2, 3, and 4, and many other places in Scripture, as you know. So first of all, we in order to overcome the clash of expectation versus reality, we need to have this footing of, look, I don't need to have the majority of the good coming. I don't need to get my way. I don't need to. That's good enough. So I don't. It doesn't. It's not all about me. It's really about elevating my spouse, my wife, my husband. Okay, and then the second thing to address this gap is to have just a lifestyle of communication. You know, Susan and I, especially since we've become empty nesters, have just taken up walking together. We walk in the neighborhood often, most days. We go for walks together, and we talk. And before that, it was after the kids were down, we'd often talk in the kitchen as we're cleaning up the kitchen. We'd just talk. while cleaning up the kitchen together. We have a lot of opportunities where we talk. When we're driving in the car, we like to talk. We like to talk. In fact, some of my bad driving incidents are because I've been too busy talking. But nonetheless, we talk. And you know what happens when you talk? You discover things about yourself that you didn't know. Like talking about what's going on helps me get better in touch with what's going on inside me. So talking is not just a matter of figuring out what's going on in the other person, but you also discover what's going on with yourself.
Yeah.
And so a lifestyle of great communication puts you in a position where you're constantly discovering, what do I want? What do I hope for? What do I want more of in our marriage? What do I love about you? What do I love about our relationship? Right? What could we work on together? What am I hoping for? What do I want? What are my, goals and dreams? Whatever. There are lots of things that we could talk about, but having a lifestyle of talking to one another and valuing transparency and candor. I'm not talking about candor that says, oh, by the way, I saw 3 more defects in you today. That's not what I mean by candor.
No.
What I mean by candor is how I'm feeling. Okay? If you look back on the what is a Christian marriage, by the way, the foundation is great friends. And that's built on selfless love, security, encouragement, building others up. It's not about speaking the truth in love like, I've spotted some of your faults. You will really be grateful to me for pointing these out. No, it's more about speaking the truth in love. Speaking the truth in love is more about, hey, this is what's going on inside me. It's vulnerability. It's candor, right? It's being willing to be known, as well as being willing to know what's going on with the other, even if it might be even if it might hurt a little bit. Okay? So anyway, that lifestyle of communication is essential. That will head off many of the expectation versus reality conflicts, because guess what? You're learning reality before expectation crashes into it. You're adjusting your expectations. But then the third point is just learning, growth, adaptation. I mean, the fact is we are on a journey, and even painful hardships, even suffering, we rejoice in, right? That's what Romans 5:3-4 says. Because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, character, hope. Okay? So, in fact, the marriage you're in is a unique and privileged opportunity. It's a unique and privileged classroom God has put you in order to help you grow.
I think with, that's the scripture in Philippians 2, that takes learning, the school of learning humility and valuing others above yourself. Like in marriage, you get such a deeper lesson with that than you ever did growing up with your family or roommates or at work. And so it really is a special opportunity God's given you to put your discipleship into practice and to learn that humility and how to put other people's interests before that. You would have there's just no comparison to being able to learn in this way.
And it is true that some people may have the gift of celibacy, okay, or the opportunity to live a single life that works for them.
Yes.
But they will miss out on other things, right? That marriage brings opportunities, real opportunities to knock off those rough edges, okay? And to refine you and to help you grow. So I am so much the better man because of my wife.
Yes.
So much. So Susan's going to tell a story about an expectation versus reality from our young marriage, and then I'm going to tell one. And then if you guys have thoughts you want to share, please feel free to share them, or examples.
Yeah, we were thinking through our early years of being married, and one of the biggest ones we had with expectation versus reality was for me was our first Christmas. We got married in January. Steve finished grad school in May, and then we moved down to Atlanta from the DC area. And so we were here, 4 or 5 months. He's working and on a consultant job, and he was in Minneapolis working. He would fly home for the weekend. So anyway, for Christmas, we were going to his family's for the first Christmas. And so he was in Minneapolis, I was in Atlanta, so we flew to LA, and I got there a couple days early. And, I was visiting with his family, and, this was only the second time I'd been to his parents' house. And then we had...
First year, and she's there without me.
Yeah, yeah, for a few days, but I was brave. And then Christmas Eve came, and, our families were a lot alike. I can remember praying, like, that we would have kind of similar family backgrounds, so we could, just there'd be an understanding. Well, the first Christmas Eve, I, in the evening, crying in the bedroom, because it was not like any Christmas I had ever, it didn't feel like Christmas. It was just a different, and as I gained wisdom through the years.
Tell her the dining service that my mom.
Well, we ate dinner on faded plastic plates, and we had rice and beans on a plastic tablecloth, and probably mismatched stainless on the table, stainless silverware. And there was no elegant Christmas menu, there was no Christmas china, there was no crystal, there was no silver, there were no cloth napkins, or I think we had paper napkins, or anyway.
Expectations versus
reality. And it was just, it didn't feel like Christmas, and I was crying, and it was, anyway, so, and I, as I gained wisdom through the years, I realized, his mother is 10 years older than my mother. And she was 70, and probably not a very, she was more fragile, kind of health-wise, and anyway, and so it was just a different, and through the years, as, Steve that night was listening to me, comforting me, trying to help me have a good Christmas. And, it was an adjustment going to his parents' house because his mom didn't see well, and, I finally...
So she didn't see the dirt that you saw.
Yeah, it was... around, and we tried to she had 3 vacuum cleaners, and we tried to use them. One didn't work, one blew out dirty smoke. Anyway, so you couldn't even clean if you wanted to. We ended up sweeping dust and dirt, and, and then I realized she's older, and she just doesn't see well. And anyway, she didn't have anybody to help her. And then I realized that it was overwhelming for her when we came to visit from Atlanta. All his other siblings came in, so she went from cooking for 2 to cooking for, well, and as the grandkids came, cooking for 10, and she just couldn't do it. And so we learned through the years that when we got there, within a day or so, we'd menu plan out for the whole week, and we would go shopping, and we would cook, and I learned to pack my rubber gloves and scrubby sponge, and I would clean, and I just never wanted to embarrass her. I tried to be quiet and discreet about it. And then over time, I learned where her china was, and she was so happy to use it. But she just didn't, and I learned where things were, and she's like, oh, the table looks so pretty. I haven't used those dishes in 20 years. And she was delighted, but it took facing that expectation, the difference between the expectation and reality, and coming to an agreement and figuring out how to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Right, so it began with tears, and then it continued with communication, and of course the priority is to choose wife over family you grew up with, and it shouldn't be an either or, right? It's not one against, but I wasn't. I wasn't being defensive for the sake of my family. I wanted to come to my wife's rescue.
Right. I remember he listened to me and thought, well, what can we do to make this better?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, you just need to get over it. That's just the way my mom is. It was because on one hand, he knew that his family would like to adjust to me some, so
they loved her.
Yes, they do, and I love them, and I've even gone to see them without him sometimes, but so I thought in our communication there wasn't him versus me or my family versus you. It was how can we get together, work toward some agreement here.
Yeah, and my mom really came to appreciate that the first couple days we'd clean stuff up.
Yeah.
I mean, she came to appreciate it, and we didn't have to hide it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It wasn't a thing. It was oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So expectation meets reality, humility, communication, adapting, learning, growing.
Right.
Well, here's one. Every would-be groom has heard the sound advice that let the bride have her way with regard to the wedding, more or less,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Well, there was a certain conflict about the rehearsal dinner. And Susan was talking about champagne for the toast. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think we should serve alcohol. And we were what are you talking about? Not serve alcohol? We gotta have champagne for the toast.
Well, and also his family's in LA, mine's in South Carolina. We're getting married in DC, so I'm planning the rehearsal dinner that his parents are hosting, but I planned the menu and printed the invitations and everything, but it would, they paid for it, so it was their event.
Well, and that was the conclusion that we came to as a result of communication. As we were talking about it, we didn't have an argument about it. It was like, I want this. No, I don't feel comfortable with that. It was one of the rare things that you pushed back on with regard to the whole wedding weekend.
Right.
I'm not sure I really feel good about that. And finally, we came to the conclusion, okay, my parents are no alcohol people. They're teetotalers. And my mother was a child of teetotalers. So it was a no alcohol family. Mm-hmm. And if they're hosting the rehearsal dinner, right, if they're paying for it, right, meaning they're hosting it, then they have a right. They have a right not to feel uncomfortable about what's served. And so, although they were just sending a check, they wouldn't have known until they arrived.
Right.
We basically got to that point where it was like, this is their spot.
Yeah, out of respect and
out of the whole ceremony. So anyway, that was a result of communication and humility and looking for a solution.
Right.
So she eventually, that was an expectation of hers. It was an expectation of my parents. Never knew that it was an issue. Actually, we didn't bring them up.
Right,
Bring
and
it
we
up with-
toasted with sparkling cider, so we found a
And toast.
Oh, and toast.
So her uncle decided to offer a toast with toast.
The waiters brought out this huge platter of toast, and everybody had a piece of toast.
Yeah. So we made something fun. So those were some incidents, in our young married life of expectation meets reality. And as we were actually considering this topic, we thought, the whole premarital counseling process that we do is really, and oh, by the way, especially through this particular program, right, the Learning to Live as One, it's got the workbook, it's got the chapters on all these different topics. What is it all about? It's about getting fiance and fiancée, right, pre-bride and groom, to communicate. It's getting you both to communicate so that there will be fewer conflicts after the wedding, or fewer expectation meets reality surprises.
Right.
But they're inevitably going to happen. And in fact, as we were also considering this, it's not only expectations before marriage meets reality after marriage. We are always perpetually developing expectations. And those expectations may or may not be shared. And so this is an ongoing lifestyle of communication. If it worked for us in premarital counseling, it can work for us in marriage.
Right.
That a lifestyle of candid, open, honest communication will result in gentler, fewer, and more successful conflict resolution. So that's what we have to share on the topic. So here's a question for you. On the expectation versus reality question, did what we shared match up with your expectation? Or what were some of your expectation versus reality stories? Or were any of the things we shared particularly useful or helpful? And may I be the cameraman to...
Yeah. Take it away.
Okay.
So yeah, you
And
said
this is Darius
yeah.
and Allie.
Oops. That's good. Something that you said, both of y'all said over and over again, and it's written here: a lifestyle of communication.
Mm.
I mean, that's and of course humility. Those two things are just critical or crucial, like in order for a marriage to work. And just I think it's funny now. We both think it's funny now, but at the time it wasn't. So this is early on.
I don't know what you're about to say.
This is first year, and I would come home before Allie during this time, and so I'm sitting at home on the couch, and she comes home. She expected me to get up and greet her as she walks in the door and say hey, but I wasn't doing that. I guess I was still in my single man mode of just being alone and not having to talk that much at home. So there was a conversation that happened. Allie was like, hey, I would like for you to, when I come home, to greet me, say hello, and give me a hug, something. Don't just sit there.
Because this is what it was. I would walk in the door, and this was like not long after we got married. It was the first school year started after we got married, and I walked in the door. I was like, "Hey, good to see you." And he was like, "Hey." And then he would just go back to watching the TV. He was like laid up on the couch and watching TV. I was like, are you kidding me? Okay. But yeah, we did have a conversation.
Yeah, we did have a conversation, and I had to think about it and be humble and like, yeah, I do need to be more vocal and greet her. You know, instead of just saying one word, it's like, hey, that's it. You know, this is my wife, and to show her the love that she needs when she comes home. And so that changed after that conversation. I appreciate, you know, you bringing it up to me, and because it didn't last very long. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't let it.
Yeah.
She didn't let it go too long. Like, she told me, like, okay, you
I
need to
also
start
think
doing this.
I understood the fact that you lived alone for years before
Mm-hmm.
I came around. So I understood that it wasn't like a you don't love me thing. It was like a
Right.
I'm used to coming home and
Yeah.
just not talking to anyone until
Right.
the next day kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
We worked it out pretty quick.
That's beautiful. Yes.
Can say something. Well, one of my questions was going to be like, if you have different expectations for something, is it better to be like, well, my expectation's higher, so you need to get up on my level, or is it better to, you know, try to readjust your own expectations, you know, like try to change it? And I actually feel like y'all's stories, like about the Christmas, it was more like you found a compromise, you know, and so you were able to kind of like then over time meet that expectation, versus like the wedding with the champagne and everything. It was more like you just kind of needed to readjust what your expectation was.
Right.
So I guess it kind of answered my question of like, I think it probably depends on the situation and just being able to communicate, and can you find a compromise, or should you just readjust, or should someone, you know, maybe change a little bit to meet that expectation, or however we can make it work. So.
I think it's funny that you bring that up because I was literally thinking a lot of our issues, like I guess that we have had, like we would go through like the marriage, you know, dynamics or whatever, and we had different expectations because we actually had different definitions of what those things were. And so
We had to get real specific.
like we would have like I know we share this, but like both of us thought we were clean, but we had different definitions of what clean was.
Yeah.
So we both expected each other to be clean, and like, oh, we have the same expectation in this area.
Yeah.
But then our understanding, our, you know, definitely
Yeah,
whatever
we
you want
learned
to
that
call
he's
it.
like dirt and dust clean, and I'm like organized and put away clean.
Yeah.
But it's like, so you would both call that clean, but it's different levels. And when the floors aren't vacuumed, he can't take it. And when the table is cluttered, I'm like, I don't understand how you don't see this. Like, kind of different
Yeah.
dynamics in that.
Wow, y'all are like the perfect person together.
Our house is spotless.
Well, it's
no,
funny.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no,
It's not.
It's not at all. But no, I
Yeah,
think
but
it's a
there's
good
like
question.
we had multiple situations like that where it's
Yeah.
like we thought we agreed on something, but then once we got into the nitty gritty of how we defined it, we were like, oh, it's actually kind of different. Of how
And
we
it's
do
always
it.
that battle of like, do you get, like what you were saying, like, do you
Yeah.
come down, do I go down to your level, or do you come up
Why
to
is
my
my
level?
level
Or-
down?
Well, either whoever thinks that they're higher, or do you come, like, do you lift up, you know, with my
Yeah.
side, or do I lift up with your side, you know?
All right.
So, anyways, communication is what I got out of all this. Is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. We're just gonna
you know,
keep
how do
talking
we
about it.
join together as one?
Yeah.
Um,
To make sure we're both
And-
happy with the
and, you know,
decision.
the spiritual rocket science of it all.
Yeah.
Dexter, did you have something?
Yes, Steve. I had a question.
And by the way, this is Dexter and Constance.
Yeah, on the topic of intimacy.
Okay.
Before we got married, my expectation changed once my wife shared some things about her schedule, and I was like, "My schedule? A schedule to be intimate?" It was like, no. So I wanted to ask you and your wife, what is some things that help you over the years, especially you as a man, your expectations of what you thought before being married, as a husband, considering your wife, but at the same time still not depriving yourselves. So what would be a healthy balance?
This is a great question. I'm curious too.
Susan, you could begin.
Well, I would think, first of all, I think about, you know, the Bible does say don't deprive one another. And so generally, our rule of thumb has been the one with the greater need sets the frequency, because you don't want to have that need not be met. So, and then, you know, there are always things that happen that, you know, kids, sickness, jobs, whatever. Pregnancies, things can happen that interfere with that. But that's sort of been our rule of thumb. And then it can be, and it might be like, if you had a thing like we normally known, like, Friday, if we didn't Thursday, Friday's definitely gonna be a night for lovemaking. And then there probably would be another night in there somewhere. So and that was a schedule that we kind of settled on that worked well. But,
And let me this was a while ago that we were on this schedule, but it was basically twice a week at least. Okay? And I've heard people react against the scheduled lovemaking thing. But the bottom line is you both got to be on the same page. And if you don't communicate it and schedule it, how you can be on the same page? So the communication about policies regarding spontaneity are good, okay? And so what we came up with, if we're gonna get 2 a week in, then the rule was, if we haven't made love by Friday night, we were definitely gonna make love Friday night. And if we hadn't made love twice during the week, by Saturday night, there would be another one Saturday night. So that's just the arrangement we had.
And with the scheduling thing, it's like, if you buy tickets to a concert, you can
get excited.
That's scheduled. There's nothing spontaneous about that. But you're looking forward to it because it's special. So even if it is scheduled, it still could be special. So that's sort of a way to kind of think, well, that's not spontaneous, but that's a way around that with my thinking. Like, there's lots of things in life that are very special and they're not spontaneous. So.
But and the clause there was the spontaneous clause was, well, if we do make love earlier in the week, you're off the hook for Friday. I mean, not off
unless it's spontaneous.
Like, you can get your second one in Friday, and then you're off the hook for Saturday. Now, off the hook. As you can tell, right, my appetite for sexual engagement was higher than my wife's. Now, that's common among men and women. It's not every couple that's like that. Some couples, the woman has the greater sexual appetite. But, of course, 1 Corinthians 7 lays it out that there are only 2 reasons not to make love, not to come together. And that is for prayer, but only for a time. Okay? But only for a time. So even if you were both in agreement, you would be going against the scriptures if you let it go on for more than a time. Okay, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, right, if things are going on for weeks without making love, it might be because you're at an age, or you have a health problem or something, and there are always exceptions. But anyway, just communicate about it. There's no rule.
Right.
The key is communication. So getting back to Dexter's question, I would say that, Susan and I talk about sex a fair bit because it is one of those things that there's lots of stuff which builds up inside. Okay? There's a lot, and to grow in being great lovers means not only that you engage in marital lovemaking, but that you don't have stuff built up inside, right? That you rejoice together, you enjoy the coming together, and it has a really positive effect on your relationship.
You know, you think about back to the garden where there was no shame when they were naked. There's just that sense of there are no insecurities, there are no little grudges, there's no little, anything. It just, there's a purity and a wholesomeness in the way that God intended it to be before sin came in the world.
Yeah. So it's so we've strayed from expectations and reality to commentary on sex, but that's not a bad thing. That's fine. One of the things that I think is really important is that sex is still about your relationship. It's not about one partner getting something that they want at the expense of the other. And so it's important that both husband and wife are giving and engaged and building the other up. Even if sometimes one of us doesn't have the need or appetite to complete the second half of the equation. Okay? So sometimes it's just like, I think we could just snuggle now. It's like, okay.
Well, and sometimes I think that that's just what, what if we're still living when we're 90 and, sex might be more about sleeping naked together and just cuddling and stuff. It may not have to be about intercourse and climaxing or something. There's just the intimacy and the love being together part.
There you go. But the key is communication and working it out together. And if you both have the attitude of, I want you to be fulfilled, then you'll figure out how to make that work. Dexter, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Any other comments, reflections? And Sydney and Cameron,
Hello.
welcome.
So I just wanted to say I really appreciated your point when you said speaking the truth in love is like speaking the truth about yourself as well. Because I think a lot of the times that when I think about that in a relationship, it's like, oh, if something's off, I gotta say something. But I think even knowing it's about sharing my heart honestly and openly too, I thought that was really helpful.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is Grant and Mary Alice.
I think something I'm gonna try to take away from it is not like some super profound, but it's really important with the Philippians to considering each other above yourself. Something that it's simple to say, but it's super hard to do. But I think it's really important to be able to bridge that gap between expectations and reality. And I think it was a great example of Susan shared about the Christmas and didn't meet her expectation, but she didn't just like wallow in it and like, oh, this is terrible, but hey, how can I put myself in your mother's shoes and and then serve her and give to her and able to make a good situation out of it. So I think that's something I'm going to be focused on, just considering Mary Alice's needs above myself.
Excellent.
I had another thought when Darius was mentioned about a lifestyle of communication. I thought, there's two things or a couple practical things that we've done that have helped with that. And one of them is on Sunday, usually we have a scheduling time each week where we sit down with our schedule books and we just look through the week and we talk about, do we want to have someone over? Or what'd you think about the sermon when they talked about hospitality? I've been wondering, how can we do that? And so we would talk and plan and figure out how to make that happen. And I think, especially with the partners part of the Christian marriage, that it takes communication. It takes a lifestyle of how to be partners, especially with raising children. And I can remember times where you have so much in your head, but not enough time to talk about it. I can remember having a list of things that we needed to talk about. You know, everything from choosing a new gas provider to where are we going to go on vacation, or, you know, what do you just, and that we kept them on the counter, and as we got through them, we would just tick them off. You know, okay, we've talked about that, but, you know, sometimes I think you got to figure out how to have that lifestyle of communication, because it's not always easy. Or there may be times you come home fried from work and you're like, oh, not today, I just can't today. But those were some practical things that we've done just to help us be able to communicate.
Yeah, let me add some comments to that Sunday afternoon scheduling communication time. That has been super valuable to us, and it's something that we recommend for everyone who asks advice of us on this matter, is that you have a weekly time to talk. And we talk over our schedule books, because there's so many schedule items. Like, okay, now such and such is coming up where we're going, what are we going to do for Thanksgiving? And talking through that, and a lot of times she'll come to me with a number of these things that are buzzing around her mind, because she keeps the family calendar more closely than I do. But then we also talk, now I've got this meeting this week, and I'm going to be here this night, and so we both know what we're all doing, you know, throughout the week. And then we also look at our life goals. We've got 7 categories, and my categories are different than her categories, but and then I'll look up and I say, what can we do to really grow in our family? You know, what are we going to do? And we think, well, why don't we do this? Or what? So that gets us talking about things that aren't urgent. They're not something that has to be done for Friday, but it gets us talking about things that are important to us, things that we've been thinking about, things that are long-term or medium-term, not just things that are short-term. And that has been super valuable. And I would say that fits squarely into the lifestyle of communication. Right. So, any other comments? Oh, yes, Mary Alice.
I was thinking of an expectation, I guess, versus reality story. And when we got married, obviously you're merging 2 families and figuring out like holidays and in-laws and stuff. And something that I'm used to with my family is, like they kind of talked about, they plan out like months in advance, and like my mom for like meals has a full menu, like you just know what's going on. And so I know with Grant's family, they're more like, just like they don't plan as much or not as far out in advance, and they don't plan out the menus, or like maybe they do but don't tell us. And so that was an adjustment. Like when we were going on vacation with them, I was like, what is going on? Like, what are we doing? Like, where's the menu? And they're like, oh, we're not really. They're just like sitting on the beach. I'm like, are we going anywhere? Like, and so for me, it was learning to ask more questions, like, what are we, like, what's the plan? Or like, what are we going to be eating? Especially because I have dietary things, so it's just helpful for me to know. And Grant's been really good at asking what we're eating and stuff, but I'm just so used to like, it's sent out like a month in advance. Like, this is what everything that's going on. But like this past beach trip, like we went out and like the girls did stuff when the guys did stuff, which was fun, but it took like planning it, you know, and asking questions and not just sitting back, I guess. So that was kind of something that I thought of.
Anything else?
I want to talk to you, Steve. Next question.
Yeah.
As a husband, what will help you to meet your wife's need, expectations, when it's something that you probably be like, it's not that serious, but it's very important for your wife. What will help you over the years for you to consider and giving it all you are to meet an expectation that is feasible, and for you not be like, oh, Susan, that's not important, we get to that next day. So what I help you as a husband over the years, I've always trying, at least giving it a try to meet your wife's expectation.
So, to do something that really causes your wife to light up, okay, to be really excited and encouraged, that's actually a rare opportunity that I should jump onto, that I should seize. Because what if I think, I do want to grow in my marriage. What should I do that would really make her happy? And I come up with some idea. Is that really going to make her happy? Not nearly as much as if I responded at that little window of opportunity where she indicated there was something that I could do that would really make her happy. Okay? For my wife, bugs are a real issue. And so, okay? So when there's a roach, it is a full red alarm alert. Okay? I come running across the house. And I've got my technique. I grab the can of spray poison here. I grab the fly swatter there. I grab the broom here, and I run to the location or a shoe. A shoe. It all depends.
On the couch.
What?
It's like standing on the furniture.
So this is an opportunity, and I run to the call. And afterwards, she always says, "You're my hero."
What was it, Thursday night? He was in bed, lights out on his side, and I see one high on the vaulted ceiling, and it was a big one. And I'm like, he just jumped up, and it flew, because we got close enough that it flew. I ran out of the room screaming, so I didn't see where it went. But he stayed there and he killed it. He was my hero. I would have never slept. I would have been sleeping in another room if we had not found that roach.
Another one is carrying bags of groceries in from the car. Okay? It's a simple thing, but it means a lot to her. I mean,
This is up a whole flight of stairs.
there's the greeting her when she comes home. And then there's also just helping with something that's sort of burdensome for her. I mean, she's already been to the store. That's a burden. It's sort of a burden for her. Sometimes. Okay. So she's already been to the store. She would just really love some help, carting stuff up from the garage, up the stairs to the kitchen. And so I run to greet her and to bring stuff up from the car. It's like so inexpensive for me, so cheap in terms of my energy, right? But it means a lot to her. And so, and there's one other I just thought of here, but it may have skipped my mind while I was finishing that up. Well, I may think of it. What was that?
I had a thought, Dexter, when you asked your question and you said it's not that important. I thought if Steve said that to me, like that's not important, when I would have felt so crushed and so deflated. And if he had said, it may be along the same lines, but instead of saying that, if he had said, well, tell me about that. And if he had said, wow, that really sounds interesting. I don't know if we can do that this week, or let's look at our budget and see if we can do that, whatever it would be. But that kind of response isn't as deflating as, oh, that's not important, or that, so the response would also, the way you responded to a request or something would make me feel very valued and heard, or not valued and not cared about.
In fact, every conflict is actually an opportunity to get to know your spouse better, to draw them out, to understand what is it they're looking at differently than I'm looking at it. China dishes are really important to Susan. She loves China, okay? And one time we were heading back from South Carolina to, yeah, we're, okay. And so at one time we're heading back from South Carolina, she says, hey, can we stop at the Villeroy and Bach outlet store in Tanger? I'm like, oh my word, you know, this is what I could have been doing. But instead I was like, would that be really, really valuable to you? And so she said, yeah. And so I said, you know, here's an opportunity. And I thought to myself, you know what? I alone would not care about the dishes, but I'm with someone who loves them. So I actually engaged with her as we walked throughout the store. Tell me, what are the dishes you like most? Or, you know, what do you look for in good dishes? Or, you know, whatever. Trying to understand her point of view.
Yeah.
So I would just say every opportunity for a conflict is an opportunity for greater unity instead. So with that, I think we need to wrap up.
Sorry.
Thank you guys so
So-
much for sure. Yes.
All right.